We can speak now to Simon Rofe, who is an expert in sports diplomacy and an associate professor of international politics at the University of Leeds. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. As we've been saying, 500 days to go now until the Olympics here in Paris. Does this look and sound to you like a city that's ready for the challenge that lies ahead?
Well, good evening, and thank you for having me. Certainly, there are some challenges still ahead, but in many regards, the position that Paris finds itself in is ahead in terms of other Olympics this far out. Certain Olympics have had a greater run-in, if you like, and Paris has got a lot of the existing infrastructure that means that whilst there may seem to be a lot of disruption, it's not on the scale in a major metropole as it perhaps was in Rio or in London. The exception being Tokyo in 2020/2021 because of the COVID crisis was done in such an isolated fashion, if you like, that it was very difficult to assess the impact on the general population when the population was locked down for a portion of that year, of course. So the preparations for an Olympics begin on essentially a 7-year cycle. And where we are now, 500 days, a year and 6 months or so away from the opening ceremony, I think Paris is in pretty good shape.
Any alarm bells? I mean, this is a country that's had a couple of issues, for example, at policing major sporting events, notably football last year. And some people said the ticket website quite difficult to use, not particularly intuitive. I mean, have you heard anything that makes you think perhaps a bit of improvement could be in order?
I would, I'm sure there are these kinds of challenges that are still there. Certainly something like a website interface, making it intuitive, particularly to users in other from other cultures, and making it, as it were, mobile friendly as well as available on a desktop access. These are typical kind of challenges that major sporting events face, particularly a multi-sport event. So this is because it's the Olympic Games and you have all of the different sports across multiple sites. Whilst many are concentrated in Saint-Denis, others are spread all around Paris and indeed across the country to the extent that the sailing and the like. So there are different challenges when you have a multi-sport event, even when it's centered on such an established global city as Paris. The particular challenges in terms of some of the logistics and moving things around, if we started with a blank sheet of paper, then maybe it might be a valid criticism, I suggest. But because Paris has got so many established ways of working, that the IOC and the Olympic Games and the IPC, the International Paralympic Committee, have to negotiate their way around that as well.
I mean, I don't know if you've been to Paris recently, but there's an awful lot of construction work around the place. There are a lot of bicycle lanes that are being built. Taxi drivers are always complaining about the state of the traffic and the difficulty of navigating this city. Are they going to be rewarded, do you think? I mean, is this city going to recoup some of the sacrifices and investments that's been made by pretty much everyone who lives in Paris in these games? I mean, are there rewards for a host city?
There certainly are rewards. Whether they, compensate directly, as it were, the pocket of a taxi driver today or a sales kiosk tomorrow, that is a much harder thing to track. The rewards will come, in the performances on the track and in the pool and other sporting venues. Hosting an event gives a bump of about 20% to a nation's medal table. So that's a tangible benefit that you can put down in sporting terms. Now, the cost of that, whether that's a cost that everyone in Paris would buy into, when everyone in France would agree to, that's something for Mr. Macron and the Paris Organising Committee to convince people of. But certainly there are benefits. The visitor numbers that will come through the city, the businesses that will benefit from, whether they're hotels, restaurants, that will benefit from those visitors. They are tangible things that can improve and help the French economy at the time. Now, the balance, as with any mega sporting event, between the initial outlay, the recoup at the time, and then the legacy that Paris will leave to the communities, the facilities, on the one hand, making sure they don't become white elephants, that is unusable to be, for communities. Those are the kinds of things that the Paris bid built into its thinking, and will remain to be seen in the decades after a sport mega event. That's where you can tell, with the health benefits, some of the non-sport outcomes, the education, the global engagement. They're the things that make countries and cities invest in hosting sport mega events.
Yeah, and a clean River Seine as well, so an environmental benefit, because of course they are trying to get the Seine absolutely ready for some of the swimming events. That's something I find particularly exciting in the build up to the Olympics. Well, what struck you that's on the cards here in France ahead of the Paris 2024 Olympics by way of a venue or an initiative, something that's made you say, "Wow"? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, not at all. Going back to your previous point, I think Paris has a long history of hosting important events, whether that's on the diplomatic front or sporting occasions. Some of those have met challenges, and as a keen reader of French domestic politics, you would recognise that. But I think the thing that really struck me was the opportunity to have the opening ceremony not in a stadia, and of course the Stade de France is a perfectly good, indeed excellent global stadia, but to have it on the River Seine. Now, that lends itself to a sustainability dimension, which you mentioned, cleaning up the River Seine, making it able to host the swimming events, some of the open water swimming, etc. But just the opportunity to showcase that wonderful river that bends its way through the city of Paris, that's a really thoughtful approach to my mind. And I think it's something that will make a unique stamp on the Olympics. All Olympics are and Paralympic Games are unique, but I think that's a really bold move on behalf of the Paris Organising Committee, and something that will be, the visible, tangible, cultural and sporting legacy of Paris 24.